then it's on the internet worldwide. I mean, I got an audience of around 200,000 per show now. And, the thing is, with the internet, you can find any information, good, bad, or a lot of propaganda, a lot of lies. And depending on your emotional state, you believe the stuff or you don't believe it. Right. But a lot of people believe a lot of the stuff that is pure garbage.
Exactly. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And it's scary.
But anyway, guys, yeah. So, but real fast, my dad moves us all to New Jersey, right? I go to the College of New Jersey, and I get my degrees from there. And then I wind up being a special ed teacher, and I start working with children who had they didn't have the qualities, the attributes, the characteristics that normal kids had, That's why I began to feel kind of blessed, Gary. I had to work with these kids to appreciate that. That's when I started. I always prayed in my life, but then I really put in a lot of prayers every single day because I just felt like I was blessed, and I kind of owed back. I mean, the children that I had there, they had nothing going for them. I even had kids who had these terrible cancers of the head and the jaws and stuff like that. And I would just kind of give them coloring books, and I'd let them try to color within the lines, but they had such terrible cancers in their jaws. They would drool so much. They're trying so hard to color in those lines, but they're drooling because of these terrible cancers they had, and we would try to clean it up. I had a teacher's aide in the room who should have helped me out. So this is how I felt blessed, and this is how I said I need to pay back God for some reason. So I started praying a lot. But the thing was, as a special ed teacher, I had plenty of time on my hands because these kids had to have a 2-hour lunch, and teacher's aide would have to feed them at that time. So I had all that time off. I never had to test them. I didn't have to correct tests like most teachers do. So I had all that time. So Gary, I knew how to bartend. So I think this is where we're going to start to find out why this creature came into this house. Anyhow, I started bartending at night because I had all this extra time, and I started working in nightclubs. And the people that I met in the night were most of them were good people, good stand-up people. I could say that, but a certain percent dealt with on kind of the darker side of things. They were like a little bit wicked. I mean, they were looking for alcohol, of course, but they were looking for drugs. They were wanted to commit adultery. Anything they can get their hands on, they were looking for, But and a lot of them were atheists. I don't know why they're so popular today. Real quick, I'm going to tell you, I have 2 nephews. Like I said, we were all brought up the same way to have our morals in our church. And 2 nephews that went, because I'm right here in New Jersey, we're all in New Jersey, they went to work in New York. Somebody talked them into that atheism was a good thing. They took their faith in God away. They took their belief in God away. And now they're atheists. And when I try to talk them back into reality again, they just laugh at me. And they tell me, well, when God sticks his head out through the clouds, then I'll believe. But in the meantime, I don't believe there's any God. So I just wanted to understand that people are persuasive enough to do things to other people, to persuade them to become atheists. I also have my wife goes to the hospitals around here. She takes care of some of these ladies who have these terrible MS and they can't even move. And she goes there to make them feel better, buys them some clothes. Sometimes they come here for lunch just to get them out of those hospitals and things like that. And we were talking about this one time, and another relative was listening and said, yeah, those people are better off dead. And I was thinking, who took her compassion away? I mean, we all were brought up the same way, but somebody convincing came and took her compassion away. You know what I'm saying? People can do that, because I want you to know when we talk about this creature that was here, I want you to know the power that this creature has over a lot of things. And there's one more thing. Like I have other nephews, so now they're heroin addicts. Somebody came and convinced them the heroin was a good thing to do. And now they have living this life of having to go into hospitals. A few of them have already had to have that medicine after you overdose and you die from an overdose, had to be brought back to life, and then they're still heroin addicts, they're still going to halfway houses. Their life is miserable because somebody came and convinced them this was a good idea. So I just want to keep that in mind when we talk about this actual aberration that I had. So, like I said, a good portion of these people were atheists. And as I say, I can get along with everybody. And I kind of like everybody. There's nobody that I can't get along with. But I realized after a few years, Gary, these people who were like ships in the night without a rudder would go in any direction that you told them to go, and they would do anything you want. They sort of kind of over the years died from accidents, overdoses, suicides, and cancers. And I I felt so terrible for I felt that they were like lost souls, and now they're lost in that. Like I said, they're going to be in that fifth dimension, lost too. I mean, they were lost here. They're not going to all of a sudden, understand what they're supposed to do in that next dimension. So, I mean, I worked with a guy who was a good friend of mine. His name was Chris. I worked with him for years. He was an atheist. He always made fun of God. He always made fun of Jesus. He made fun of the Virgin Mary. I always told him, just don't talk to me about like that, And he drank and smoked 7 days a week, 7 nights a week. One day he didn't feel well. He went to go visit the doctor, and he realized he had like 4th stage cancer, so throughout his body. So he died within 8 weeks. I went to go visit him. He couldn't work anymore, so we go visit him. He looked like he aged like 40 years within a week, So when he finally died, I just felt like I tried to tell him, maybe it's time that you actually start believing in God now, And he was even more bitter, Gary, because of his diagnosis. So I felt terrible for him. He died in a state like nobody should die, and I felt helpless for him. But in my religion, Gary, we're told that people fall into hell like snowflakes fall from the sky, especially if nobody's there to pray for them. So all these people that I knew, I felt were lost souls who died these freakish ways and accidents and overdoses, suicides and stuff like that. I started praying for them. And I would say to God, if this is true, that if you could help these souls, I'm going to pray for these souls that I know, and I would name them and say, so as long as you give me the time here, I'm going to pray for these people. To help them, just don't send them to hell until I'm done finished praying for them, So that's what I would do. So this is what I think was the prerequisite of why this creature came here. But I want to tell you a couple of funny stories about it. You got time for that right now?
Well, well, it's your time. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, well, before we actually start, I just want to, as I worked in the nightclubs, I realized I saw another problem, a problem that men didn't know how to communicate with women. So like a lot of guys would say, if they saw a girl, they say, "Who is that girl? Should I buy her a drink? Should I ask her to dance? Go over and talk to her for me." So I noticed that all the places I worked at, that I had to go over and break the ice for these guys. So I decided, maybe I should write a book. It turned out to be a best-selling book. So I started interviewing women about the proper protocol, how to approach a woman, how to look, how to act, how to behave, what turns them on when we're talking to them, what turns them off, how do you get a date. So I interviewed 2,000 women. And I realized actually there's a good answer for every one of these questions. There's a good answer. So I put this book together. It turns out to be a bestseller. I go on all these TV and radio shows, including Howard Stern. I think most of your listeners probably know who Howard Stern is. And I live here right in New Jersey. So a lot of the shows were right here in New York. So it was easy for me to get there. You just had to be there like 5 o'clock in the morning. We have here in Good Day New York, Good Morning America, every single morning show. Right here in the city. So, Gary, when you just go in. You got to be there like 5 o'clock in the morning. You go into what they call the green room, and in the green room there's where you have your coffee and bagels, and you wait for the producer to tell you, when you're going to go out and do your interview. So at that time there was a lot of celebrities in those green rooms, all hawking their stuff, I guess. And one of them was Chris Brown. I don't know if you remember Chris Brown. He's still a rapper today. He was just happy to be around about. Yeah, Chris Brown.
Yeah, I've been in radio for a long time. Yes, I do.
Okay, so Chris Brown, I used to bump into him once in a while in these green rooms. So he used to have a girlfriend named Rihanna, but I think he beat her up or something like that back then, right?
Numerous
but he never
times.
Wanted well, go ahead. I'm sorry, Gary.
I said numerous times did he beat her up.
Yeah, so, Gary, he never wanted anybody to interview him about that. But one time, somebody interviewed him about that, and he got really mad. Like I said, when you go into New York, you go to the NBC studio or whatever studio you're in. They're always out over Times Square or Rockefeller Center, or the busiest streets of New York. And the green room always has this big plate glass window, and you can look out at all the people and stuff like that while you're having your coffee. And he got so mad. You could Google this. So he took one of the chairs that you sit down while you're waiting, and threw it through the plate glass window right out into the street. And I'm home one day watching this. Me and my wife are watching it, and he's getting all this publicity. And I said to my wife, that's Chris Brown. I've seen him many times. I said, this guy's a genius. I never thought, all the times I went into New York to do interviews, to take the chair and throw it through that plate glass window right out onto Times Square. I get all this free publicity.
Yeah, but if you weren't, but John, if you weren't. Yeah. If you weren't Chris Brown and you threw a chair through the window, guess where you would have been? You would have been on the news and in jail.
Really? That's funny. Yeah. So anyway, that was one of the things that happened. I mean, with the Howard Stern had 14 million listeners, and gave him one of his highest rated shows. Believe it or not, he made me come into the city. He gave me. I don't know if you listen to Howard Stern. He had like some of his guys were Benji, and he had all these kind of henchmen that worked around him that made everybody laugh. And I had to take them out into Bryant Park with the E crew and hidden cameras and equipment, and coach them into getting dates. And every week he gave me somebody really ugly. And one day he said on the air, tomorrow I'm going to give John Eagan Benji. And that fat slob's never going to get a date, he says on the air. So I take him out, and he gets like 10 dates. And he goes, next morning I hear Howard say, that fat slob Benji, John Eagan just got him 10 dates. And I was like, no way, that's impossible. So that's how that show went. So when we finally got everybody out, Bryant Park it was good for me, Gary, because Bryant Park has a lot of pretty girls there having lunch, so the odds were in my favor anyway with that. But when I finally did Howard's show, everybody wanted to listen because I got all these ugly guys dates, so it turned out to be one of his highest rated shows. So that was a lot of fun for me. So I just rode the wave with the book, and it stayed as a bestseller. So that was very nice, and I was very pleased about that.
Okay.
So yeah.
Well,
so
I got to ask you a question though. When you were in Howard Stern, was there any naked ladies?
Not that morning. Not that morning, because I know he had a lot of them, right? He did have a lot of them then.
Oh, yeah, he still does.
That was like a big draw for him, all these beautiful. But I'll tell you one thing, Gary. He was at K-Rock when I went there. He's now at Sirius Satellite.
Oh, yeah.
When I would go into the morning, I have to go in the morning, there was all these beautiful models that would be waiting outside, and they would watch to see if you got through the security, because you have to go up to the security, and name has to be there, and then they okay you, and they give you like a thing that you put on your shirt, and they walk you over to the elevator. All these beautiful girls, they all taking me up and see Howard. Let me see Howard. You know what I mean? Like, no, I would come.
Well, they want to enhance their modeling career.
Absolutely, because you got 14 million listeners. That could, anything could happen. Who knows who's watching? You know what I mean? So that was one of the things I noticed about Howard. All the other shows I did, I don't remember any really pretty girls sitting outside waiting to get you. Come on. So anyway, that's how the nightclub was going. That book became a bestseller, Gary. So I didn't want to leave my jobs, but I had to do so many TV shows and radio shows. I mean, I had to do like thousands of them, which was good because I kind of honed my skills, every day doing it. I mean, I didn't have to leave. I would go to the big ones, like with Howard Stern I would go to, and we also had Hot 97 with Dr. J and Ed Lover. I don't know if you remember them. You remember those guys?
Yeah.
No, they were good, man. They were great. They were great to me. I think they had me on like 3 times back then, and they just opened up their whole world to me. So that was the one great thing about people like you. You're just wonderful, and you just open up the world to us guys, which helps us out a lot.
No, it helps us out a lot, too, because without people like you, we wouldn't be here in this chair right now.
Yeah, I guess so, right? So it's a symbiotic relationship, I guess,
yeah.
right?
It's a two-way street.
Yeah, so now everything's going fine, Gary. I mean, so I decided I'm going to retire early from being a teacher. I love those kids, Gary. Don't get me wrong. I really love them. I tried so hard to do whatever I could for them. Like I said earlier, they didn't have any qualities, attributes, characteristics that normal kids had, Actually, the only thing we really did, we had like these iron rollers in the room. Like you see when a tractor trailer pulls up to a warehouse, they put the iron rollers out and they put the boxes on the iron rollers and they shove them down into the warehouse. Well, we had one, like an iron roll like that in the room, and I would line up the kids on the iron roll, and I'd give the first kid a box, and he would put the box on a roller, and he'd put it down to the second kid and the second kid. These are all special ed kids, remember. They couldn't even get the date right most of the time in the morning. And the other one would open up the box, and then he would send it down to the third kid. Third kid, we had stuff he would put in, and he would send it. That's all they thought these kids were ever going to do. So, I loved them. We had, like I said, we had a teacher's aide in the room at all times to help with the really troubled kids. But this book was selling so well, I decided. I even had to ask my wife. I did so many TV shows, but when I did Howard Stern with 14 million listeners, and I gave him one of his highest rated shows, I couldn't handle the orders anymore. I had to ask my wife to quit working and come here and run this business because I had to keep going to do shows, and I couldn't organize this time. She was trying to do it while she was working, but then she had to quit, and that's all she's been doing since then, believe it or not. So it was really good for me. I had a column in 2 national magazines for like 10, 12, 13 years. I got kind of burnt out with that. I mean, I used to write two complete articles